Thank you for watching this fourth episode of Through My Eyes, a survivor's journey through domestic abuse series brought to you by the Needham's Domestic Violence Action Committee. I'm Roxanne Taylor, host of this series and a past member of Needham's Domestic Violence Action Committee. Joining us today is Jessica Teperow. Jessica is the CEO and founder of JT Consulting and has worked in the sexual and domestic violence field for the last 25 years. Prior to JTC, Jessica served as the Director of Prevention Programs at Reach Beyond Domestic Violence. Jessica is also a Needham resident. We also have returning from our third episode, Ms. Pam Jordan, the Director of Community Advocacy from Reach Beyond Domestic Violence, and Brittney, who is here to continue sharing her journey as a DV survivor. Brittney is working with Reach through their Survivor Speakers Bureau. Jessica, why is it important for us to have this conversation about domestic violence?
So I think it's important in every community. Every community has its own strengths and challenges when it comes to addressing domestic violence. And I think it's important to remember that domestic violence is happening in every community. And I think as a Needham resident, I'm really aware of how there are certain things that might make it easier for people to reach out for support. It's a small community where people know each other. Neighbors are often checking in on neighbors. But I also think that it's a community where it might be especially hard to come forward because people often aren't aware that it's happening here. It's an issue that is too often shrouded in secrecy and shame. And so often it's the survivor and their families that are feeling that sense of shame and secrecy. And so I think it's an important reminder in every community, including Needham, that we don't always know what's going on behind closed doors, and to continue to check in on one another and to start having these conversations with young people in our lives about healthy relationships early and often. So I think in communities like ours, there can be a certain risk that comes to not talking about these issues. And while I think the DVAC here in Needham is doing such an amazing job raising awareness, I think for many of us growing up, these were topics that weren't really talked about in our communities.
Yeah. Where I grew up, it was definitely not talked about in the community. I don't think that I even knew the phrase domestic abuse, domestic violence. It was just something that wasn't talked about in the community that I grew up in.
Pam, can you tell us why this is so important?
Healthy relationships are really important because, as humans, we're social beings, and healthy relationships and relationships in general can give us that sense of belonging. It can help us feel connected, whether it's to others, to community. It can help to alleviate stress and improve mental health in general when we have that connectedness with other people.
And Pam, can you share with us a definition of the components of a healthy relationship?
Healthy relationships should center around trust and mutual respect. There should be equality in relationships and joint decision making. People should feel safe in their relationships, being able to have open communication and feel that there isn't judgment or it could result in violence. And a lot of relationships that end up in domestic violence have started out that way. They've started out healthy. So it's important to kind of note that these are important components to make sure are present in a relationship. And if there's any kind of signs that it's going in another direction, it's important to be able to address those concerns.
And Jessica, could you talk a little bit about the boundaries in healthy relationships?
Yeah, as Pam was saying, abusive relationships don't start off that way from the start. If I went out with someone for the first time and they started telling me what I could wear, who I could talk to, or trying to control my life, it would just be a really weird and bad first date. It wouldn't be a relationship. So there has to be that sort of honeymoon phase where trust is established and there's an investment in making this relationship work. And generally, I think an abuser very subtly at first starts to try to test the boundaries of the survivor to see what they can sort of renegotiate to start to exert control over that person. So boundaries are one of the best tools that we have to have healthy relationships. And I love the definition of boundaries as like the space I need to love you and me simultaneously. Boundaries are important in every relationship, in our families, with our partners, at work. But I think we all sometimes struggle to know how to communicate boundaries. Sometimes we can fear that setting a boundary will push someone away, but I actually think healthy boundaries and being able to communicate them help to bring us closer. And it's something that I think we can be helping young people develop skills around from a really early age. I think when we look at statistics of relationship abuse, we see a high percentage of young women who experience relationship abuse in the ages of like 16 to 24. And thinking about why so many teens are experiencing relationship violence, I think a lot of it has to do with they haven't had a lot of practice setting boundaries in any aspect of their lives. They have adults telling them what to do so much of the time. And so they don't have practice asserting boundaries. They also don't have practice knowing how to respond when someone sets a boundary with them. So I love talking with young people and giving them specific examples. Like if I'm becoming friends with someone and I don't really like texting, but I don't tell them that, and they start texting me all the time, I might start to become resentful and sort of push away from them. But had I just had the conversation from the start to be like, I'm so glad we're becoming friends, something you should know about me, I don't really like texting, it would actually allow us to have a closer relationship. And so it doesn't have to always feel so dramatic or scary. So the more that we can help them do that, I do it with my 8-year-old with friendships and thinking about how to negotiate, I really want to spend time with this friend, but this friend really wants to have me all to themselves. How to negotiate and navigate difficult conversations then sets a foundation to keep building on throughout her life and throughout our relationship and the relationships that she'll have. So I think one of the things that can be helpful to think about when it comes to boundaries, if we are supporting someone who's experienced abuse is about power and control. But when we love someone who's experienced abuse, we also sometimes feel the same loss of control that they're feeling. And so we kind of come in with this energy of wanting to fix, wanting to solve, wanting to protect. And so I think it's important for friends and family to remember to also respect the boundaries of the survivor, who really is the expert in their relationship, and to understand that if we come in trying to tell them what to do, we're just one more person who's exerting control over them, rather than giving them the space that they need to really vocalize what becoming more empowered and gaining their control back looks like.
Yeah, so when we take it back to power and control, I was still in the momentum of power and control. He still had control over me, and I wasn't free of that control yet. And it was difficult. It's really difficult for your friends and family to watch that, but at the same time, I just needed that safe space to express how I was feeling without the projection of, I would do this, I would do that, why aren't you doing this, you should be doing that. And it's exhausting as a survivor because you're already mentally exhausted from the entire situation of just, you've been in survival mode. And that was really difficult in the beginning stages of getting out of the relationship for me.
And that was a very important message. So how do you feel like members of the community can support?
I think just being, like opening your ears to just listening and not really putting your projection and what you would do in that situation. Of course, I was taking advice when it came to the legal battles and stuff like that, but I think when you're in the relationship, you know best how to navigate it. Like, I was very good at surviving under his control, and not everyone knew what it was like behind closed doors. So I knew if I said certain things, how it would trigger him, how he would react to me. So it's all good when you're telling somebody, I would say this to him, I would do this, but you don't know who he is behind closed doors. And if I do those things, it's going to be a ripple effect of a lot worse things. So I think just telling somebody that I support you in any decisions you make, I'm here to listen to you, and just really just have those listening ears, and just, sometimes in the beginning, I just wanted my friends and family to just sit with me. And it might have been awkward for them, but I wasn't in the space to receive yet, because I had just left, and it was just very traumatic. So I didn't want to be alone, because I was scared of that too, to be alone. But I just wanted the company and just to sit. And they did that for me, and that was helpful.
I think it's really important when you're trying to support someone going through domestic violence to really meet them where they're at. I know at Reach that is our approach when we're working with survivors, and members of the community, family, friends, need to kind of keep that in mind, because the survivor is the expert of their life, and it may be difficult for them to get out in a way that other people perceive it. You know, a lot of times responses will be, well, why don't you just leave? I don't understand why you're doing this. And there's a lot of things that come into play when a survivor is trying to make that decision to leave. There's a lot of trade-offs that they're contemplating in their mind. And it's really important to be able to hear them out and help support what they think the next step should be. Because their safety is the most important thing, and they know their partner, and they know how their partner may react. So it's really important to make that decision in a calculated manner that feels safe for the survivor.
I think it's one of the reasons it's so important that we have organizations like Reach with amazing advocates like Pam. We often talk about safety planning, and safety planning is really a collaborative process of listening to the survivor's wisdom and thinking about how can we keep you as safe as possible, whether you want to stay or whether you want to leave, or whether it's safe to stay or safe to leave. Because I think sometimes people, when they say that statement of why don't they just leave, they have this romantic vision that leaving will somehow eradicate all the abuse and the credits will roll and it's a happy ending. And for so many survivors, things escalate when you attempt to leave or you do leave. And so I think that's just another reason to remember that while we may have an idea of what safety looks like, the survivor really knows what's safe, and we can be learning from that and helping to sort of enhance that safety, but only if we come into it willing to listen. I love the quote about we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So when we want to just keep interjecting, it's a good reminder of, wow, this is really hard for me, but this isn't my space, this is your space. And so I think when we are thinking about community response, it's also important that friends and family have a place to process so they're better able to show up for the survivor. I know a lot of people right now who are supporting someone and they're dealing with their own feelings of anger or grief, their own fears. And so it's important that they have that space to process that so they're not projecting it onto the survivor. And I think Reach does an amazing job of that, and that's something community members and friends and family can do for each other as well. It's not about being an expert, it's really just about being able to listen. That's so often what we're looking for.
I remember one of the worst nights that I had endured with my abuser, and I remember the next day my friend had FaceTimed me, and my son at this time was 2 weeks old, and I remember answering the FaceTime and just bawling. And she was like, "You need to leave." And she didn't know it, but the way in our driveway, the way he parked his truck blocked my car. And I was so isolated from the outside world. Was I going to take my dog and my baby and just walk down the street? There was nowhere for me to go. But she didn't know that. You know, when she said, "Oh, you should just leave," it's I've thought about it, but I can't even get out of the driveway. So I just have to, I was just hiding and being quiet downstairs so that I wouldn't trigger him from what had happened the night before. So I think it's important to develop those safety plans with an advocate, if you have one, or friends and family. I had started that process, but it just seemed like every time I had started it, I just couldn't see a way around it until obviously he was arrested, and that was my way out. But yeah, I remember my friends just being like, "You just need to leave," and I'm like, I would if I could, but I can't. I can't even get out of the driveway. And those are just little things that people wouldn't know unless you were behind closed doors of it.
What else can community members do to support?
I think, again, it's on all of us to be educating ourselves and to be educating those around us. to be educating the young people in our lives and starting those conversations, sort of, again, meeting them where they are. So what kinds of friendships are they having, even starting in preschool, middle school, elementary school, middle school, high school? What are they watching on TV? What are they hearing from their friends? Getting curious and engaging in those conversations, not just as the talk, but having those ongoing conversations, and then also being able to model those boundaries ourselves. So I have a child who's years away from having a cell phone, but I'm really aware that the way I model my relationship to technology is sending a really strong message to her. And so being able to really think about, if I want her to know how to communicate boundaries in a respectful way, I have to model how to communicate boundaries in a respectful way. If I want her to have a healthy relationship to technology, I have to have a healthy relationship to technology. But I think kind of taking on that responsibility, whether we're parents or coaches or community members, neighbors, to engage young people in those conversations.
Yeah, I have a 5-year-old, so he's in preschool now, and they're growing and learning. And I think with him, I'm really starting to develop those conversations just to open a safe space for him, even though some of the things, they haven't happened yet. But if I open the questions and open the topic to him, when they do happen, he knows that he can come to me because I'm a safe person, and I'm not gonna judge him for anything, and I'm always here for him. Even though some of the things haven't happened yet, I think it's really important to just open those conversations up, even if they're little, just because they're learning and growing. And
knowing you have a safe person to talk to as an adult is such a sacred thing, but as a young person, to know I can tell you anything and I'm not going to get in trouble or be judged, it's such a strong foundation, and it's so amazing to be modeling that for him. My daughter will often start a sentence with, can I tell you something? And I always say, you can tell me anything. And it's kind of become like our little shtick, right? It's our little bit together. But I think just constantly reinforcing that message. I know there's going to come a time where there's things she doesn't want to tell me. So also making sure that she has other adults in her life that she can talk to who can be those trusted resources as well.
From Reach's perspective, we not only work directly with survivors, we are providing support for survivors through our community advocacy program, as well as our shelter. We're doing the prevention and education work within communities and in schools. But it's also important to know that Reach does have a hotline that is 24/7, where family and friends can reach out and have that availability to speak with somebody if they are struggling with how to support someone that they love that is going through domestic violence. So I just wanted to highlight that there is always someone there on the other end of the phone at Reach on our hotline that can provide that support. Our hotline is confidential, so whoever you're speaking with is there to provide support, so it is confidential.
It's encouraging to hear about what we can do to help build a stronger community. Thank you, Brittney, Jessica, and Pam, for sharing your insights with us. I welcome our audience to join us for a final episode of Through My Eyes, a survivor's journey through domestic abuse, where the discussion will focus on resources.